Rather than fragmenting liquidity, we're unifying it. And that's really very valuable. And so in a world of proliferating chains, parachains, subnets, side nets, and supernets, Flare can connect everything.
Welcome to the DeFi Standard, and this is Mickey B. Fresh. And today we're going to talk about Flares connecting everything. And really, what are the 4 components of Flare that make it unique? And I'm going to go through a few different video clips from the recent community presentation by the Flare team and Hugo. So what are the 4 components that make Flare unique? We have the FTSO, which is the Flare Time Series Oracle. We have the State Connector System. Then we have the F Assets. And then we have the Layer Cake Protocol. Those are the 4 unique components to Flare, on top of them being an EVM Layer 1 blockchain. So Hugo's going to send us through why we need bridges and what type of bridges they are building.
We've been thinking a lot about bridges and what they need, how you can make bridges better. And we really think bridges have 3 things that they really must have. They must have insurance, and that's on-chain insurance. So there must be a way for a loss to be covered by collateral that is held on-chain. There's no point having insurance off-chain because you can't trust that the person who's providing it will actually give it over. You're back in the traditional financial system. They must have risk mitigation, and they must have decentralization. Some really nice to haves that make the bridging experience so much better for everyone else, for the users of it, and for the applications that are depending on it. There's unified liquidity. And what this means is that you can bridge from any chain to a particular chain and have the same asset come out. And we'll cover what that means in a little more depth shortly. And they must have speed. Because if they don't have speed, you'll miss a lot of the opportunities that comes from bridging. And so we focus on bridging first, but that isn't the sum total of what Flare's amazing FTSO and state connector protocols can do. We really think of a world of interoperability where you can deploy an application once on Flare, and because of Layer Cake and F Assets, you can serve all the chains with a single deployment. Because of Layer Cake and F Assets and the state connector, you can use information from all the chains and from external systems with a single deployment on Flare. And that's really powerful for the industry. Then we think of another type of bridging. It's not real bridging, you're not bridging a token, but there's a huge amount of information on Web2 that's in open APIs. And this allows you to build applications. You can monetize Web2 on Web3. And so we call this Web2 to Web3 compatibility. We've got some really interesting examples of that coming up. I won't go too much into it, but think of being able to have a free-to-use game on the internet, but do something with the outcome of that game on a blockchain. So for instance, if you win that game, whoever you were playing against, you may be able to settle some kind of wager that you've had on that game. And these are the kind of examples we're thinking of. They're really...
So these are the type of bridges that Flare's building. So cross-chain from one blockchain to another to allow applications to be built on top of those cross-chain bridges. So this is different than multi-chain bridges. And in videos after this, we'll go more in depth of what that actually means and looks like. But this is just a basic overview video of the bridges. So we see how we could bridge between different blockchains, but then also the state connector system and the Flare Time Series Oracle allows to bring in data from the internet. So when we think of Web2, what is that? That's the internet. So any type of open database or open API, it could pull data into these applications. So this is going beyond just, say, DeFi applications and just liquidity and lending and borrowing. You could pull in other types of data from the internet. So this changes the landscape of, like he says, in the industry. We're going to have new types of applications. And Flare won't be necessarily the center of everything, but those applications will connect to Flare, and Flare will secure those bridges that go out. And now let's listen to another clip from Hugo.
We've been thinking a lot about bridges and what they need, how to create the bridges for the top 100 chains to allow tokens to flow from any of those chains to any other of those chains, not with 4,950 bridges, but with just 101 smart contracts. And that makes our job of building this system out much easier. And then secondly, and the most important thing, is a token issued on Cosmos, let's call that a wrapped ETH on Cosmos, coming from Polkadot, Solana, or Ethereum, or FLR, is all identical because there's one smart contract. It issues one standard token, and it's all secured by FLR. It doesn't necessarily have to flow through FLR, but it's secured by FLR, and the smart contract issues just one representation of wrapped ETH coming from any other connected chain. And that means that rather than fragmenting liquidity, we're unifying it. And that's really very valuable. And so in a world of proliferating chains, parachains, subnets, sidenets, and supernets, FLR can connect everything. And we're really excited about this system. Proliferating chains, parachains, subnets, sidenets, and supernets, FLR can connect everything. And we're really excited about this system.
So this is what they've added since that delay from last year when they were going to launch. This is what has been added, the ability to connect everything. And that's what comes with this layer cake protocol and why it'll be different, especially scaling up. So the first two chains that they announced in the presentation that they'll connect to is Ethereum and Terra to FLR and also to each other. So UST, for example, which is the largest decentralized stablecoin, will most likely be coming over to FLR and also bridge between Ethereum and Terra. The co-founder of Terra, Do Kwon, is an investor in FLR, so that does make sense why those would be the first two bridges. But the idea of being able to scale up here with just 101 smart contracts means that it's not going to take years for them to build bridges to connect to the top 100 chains. The first 50, I'm sure, would be connected fairly soon. We're not talking weeks or months, but probably by the end of the year, I would think. So that's good to know in a scaling up. So layer cake bridges all the smart contract networks. The F-asset system bridges all the non-smart contract networks, including Algorand and Filecoin. Those two would be added as F-assets at launch. Also, Bitcoin will be available as an F-asset at launch as well. And we'll dive deeper into the F-assets in the future. But understanding that FLR is bridging in a different way, that they're able to have the security of the multi-chain bridges in a cross-chain world. And they're doing it differently than, say, Wormhole, where they've been hacked. This system uses the state connector, and they're testing the data in a different way than that has ever been done before. And for example, if you want to compare to, say, like Layer 0, Layer 0 is more of swapping between different assets on different networks. What FLR is doing is actually allowing the assets to be wrapped in a way and go on to, say, for example, you wanted to move Luna to Ethereum and then Luna to Avalanche. It's all this same smart contract, as he says in that presentation there. And this is going to be very powerful for applications that are built on top because they'll be able to use all these underlying blockchains and they'll be able to use all these underlying assets and also be connected to FLR. And in future videos, we'll cover more of exactly what's going to happen with the F assets at launch. But everyone needs to understand like what has taken place here in the time that FLR hasn't launched till they're going to be launch date is scheduled for July 4th, pending an audit in June. So we'll know if that audit goes through good. We'll be on schedule to launch July 4th. So in these next 2 months, now's the time to learn and educate yourself and get familiar, because this is not just a token airdrop. This is a network launch. And beyond that, it's really a systems launch because they're launching a state connector system. the FLR time series Oracle system is made up of 100 different signal providers that already exist on Songbird right now. And they're going to be validators on the FLR network when that comes. And then the state connector system, which is built on FLR, but it is a separate system in itself where it could pull data and read the state of different actual blockchains. So that's really what they've built that's really special here. And this is all novel technology and cutting edge. So it has not been built before. And I think that's what makes FLR uniquely different than a lot of the other projects out there. So this is not hype. This is not, speculation. These are just facts. This is what the system does and what it's going to do. And another thing that I like about FLR when they launch is it's going to be decentralized and it's going to have a governance structure built into it. So there will be governance proposals that will be put up that Hugo mentions in this portfolio presentation. And I'll link the presentation below. It's 2.5 hours, so it's very long. And there's going to be a couple videos coming out of that presentation that I'm going to make because there's so much content. It's a lot for anyone to really digest in one sitting. So over time, we have 2 months to launch to really understand it and how you can take advantage of this opportunity if you're an XRP holder and you're going to be receiving a Spark token airdrop in 2 months from now. So none of this is financial advice. I'm Mickey B. Fresh, and I'm out.